Member for Jandakot.
Mr Speaker, firstly, let me congratulate you on your election as Speaker of this House. I look forward to working with you and other members in the interests of all Western Australians. I would like to thank the people of Jandakot for the trust they have placed in me and for the privilege to represent them here. It is an immense honour to join this chamber as their advocate. Jandakot is a new seat recreated by the recent redistribution. The Aboriginal word Jandakot means place of the whistling eagle, and so it is appropriate that the seat includes Australia's largest general aviation airport. Jandakot is a seat that reflects the cosmopolitan nature of Perth itself. Situated south of Perth and covering some 67 square kilometres, it is part semi-rural, has many first home buyers and young families, and many small and large businesses. It is bounded by the Roe Highway and South Street in the north, down the Kwinana Freeway to Banjup in the south, and across the three lakes of South, North and Bibra to the west. Mr Speaker, I remain an unreconstructed fan of John Howard, and one of his overarching themes was aspiration, meaning the essential goodness of each citizen's desire to improve their position by effort, risk and endeavour. In equal measure, I oppose the instinct of the left to lump people into fast, faceless collectives, to treat them as a powerless class of victims being acted on by forces beyond their control, reducing the romantic, heroic adventure of life into a capricious casino of chance. If there is any group of 24,000 Australians anywhere who could rightly be called aspirational, it is the people of Jandakot. Very few were born into great wealth, but we are hard-working people who are determined to pass on a better standard of living to our children. I live in the seat of Jandakot. I know the people. I share their values and hopes. I'm determined to work hard to represent their concerns and interests in this place and to make Jandakot an even better place to live. There is no electorate on this vast continent I would rather live in nor represent. Mr Speaker, Australia is the developed world's model economy. Yes, we are in tough economic times, but we are far, far better off than comparable countries, and Western Australia is the reason why. Though we make up just 10% of the national population, we contribute 36% of Australia's exports. If Australia was a business, 10% of the employees would be contributing 36% of the profit. We have the lowest unemployment rate in the country, a full 1% below the national average. And this, Mr Speaker, is just the beginning. Western Australia's greatest days are ahead of us. There was a time when Asia frightened Australia, but now Asia is our partner and our friend. The 3 billion people between Mumbai and Beijing are not going anywhere. They want our natural resources, and it is our duty to sell it to them. Sure, there will be ups and downs in demand and commodity prices, but the 21st century is going to be not just the Pacific century, it will be the Western Australian century. It is entirely possible that by 2050, and I believe it will happen, Perth can overtake Sydney as Australia's financial centre and premier city. It is not that Sydney is going to decline, it is that we are simply just going to overtake them. If the longest journey begins with the first step begins with the spark of belief. When I look across the Indian Ocean to the tiny specks of land called Dubai, Qatar and the other Gulf states, I'm thrilled that they have been so successful. But I ask the House, what can Western Australia achieve? It is up to us. The moment is now, and the potential is enormous. Political leadership is not everything, but it is an essential ingredient in the prosperity of a people. Add the octane of human aspiration, abundant natural resources, a rich legacy of democracy, community, the common law, and you have a combustible cocktail of opportunity. One of my favourite political leaders of the 20th century was President Reagan. I liked his policies, but maybe even more important was that he renewed an optimistic sense of belief in the American people. After a couple of difficult decades following Vietnam, with the threat of mutually assured destruction hanging bleakly in the air, President Reagan revived the can-do spirit in the American people. Well, Mr Speaker, I want the people of Western Australia to embrace again their can-do spirit. We've always had it, but every generation needs to renew it, and I hope to play a role in that regeneration. We have everything here. We have the greatest natural resources in the world. We have world-class human capital. We have the underpinning of political, judicial and social systems inherited from the British. And all around the world is the former British colonies that are renowned for harmony. We are only at the beginning of the great unfolding story that is Western Australia. Our best days are still ahead of us, and the only limitations are those that we place on ourselves. Prior to my election, Mr. Speaker, I was proud to serve as an officer in the Royal Australian Navy and equally proudly as a submariner. The submarine service, with the associated camaraderie and mateship, cannot be fully understood by those who have not experienced it. That is why I want to pay particular tribute to those submariners who have instilled in me an ethic of leadership and professionalism. Those men who have led by example and for whose friendship I am grateful. First among them, and perhaps the greatest, is Mr. Max Sheehan, Australia's most decorated submariner who quietly achieved so much during World War II and changed the course of history. My former commanding officers and executive officers in HMAS Farncombe, Commander Mark Hammond, Lieutenant Commander Shane Doolan, along with Lieutenant Commanders Michael Mitchell, Michael Jacobson, Lieutenant Dean Barr and Lieutenant Trent Yates. It is these men who have taught me so much and with whom I've had the pleasure of sharing extended periods with underwater. There is a saying in the Navy, though: you can take the sailor out of the lower decks, but you can't take the lower decks out of the sailor. I pay special tribute to leading seaman Andrew Hume, leading seaman Jason Edhouse, able seaman Stuart Walls, able seamans Wayne Morgan and Amy Harris. As a former sailor, I understand the challenges and rewards of their job, and I salute them. I'm reminded of Theodore Roosevelt's words: a good navy is not a provocation of war, it is the sweetest guarantee of peace. Under the watch of such sterling men and women, our country's defence is in good hands. In their honour, I undertake to be a passionate fighter for the rights of veterans and ex-servicemen. Both my father and my grandfather were career sailors in the Royal Australian Navy, so my decision to serve my country by following their footsteps came easily. Navy values of honour, honesty and loyalty were infused in me early. I believe that, like military service, politics is an honourable vocation. To serve in this House is a privilege. It is one I will not take lightly in the discharge of my duties. It is worth noting community surveys of the trust of certain positions. Journalists, lawyers, politicians and used car salesmen usually end up at the bottom of the list. Doctors, teachers and military officers generally end up at the top of the list. My goal, with your help, is not to drop from the top of the list down, but to raise the esteem of public office. My gratitude goes to the Liberal Party of Australia. One of the first things I did when I turned 18 was join the Liberal Party. Generally speaking, the older one gets, the more interested people become in politics. So it wasn't a particularly cool thing to do, and I can't explain why, but ever since I was young I can remember being interested in the TV, news and what was happening in the papers. I can remember asking my parents to explain what was happening. The Liberal Party and its forerunners have governed Australia for around 2/3 of the time since Federation. It is a party with a proud history that has helped make Australia great. I am proud to belong to a party that includes the likes of Sir David Brand, Sir Charles Court and Richard Court as its leaders. They were men of vision who preferred decisions to committees, who did not fear failure, who were animated by a burning desire to fulfil some great destiny for the west of Terra Australis. My political and philosophical views were formed with the support of the Honourable John Howard, the Honourable Tony Abbott and the late Bob Santa Maria. I will always be indebted for their influence and help. Additionally, those friends who were always willing to offer their encouragement, advice and support, Mr Stephen Galilee and Mr John Ruddick, I could not want for better friends or confidence. I should also thank former National Party Senator Bill O'Chee, current New South Wales National Party Senator John Williams and my good friends Christopher Pearson and the Honourable Ross Cameron for their support. Phil Edmund, Rick Palmer and Frank Parker were always available when I needed counsel. My campaign chairman, Don Gibbs, went above and beyond the call, and Mr Cameron Schuster, as the man who signed my cheques, was a godsend. I've always felt passionately about the humane treatment of animals. I'm proud to have been a life member of the RSPCA for almost 15 years. I believe we have a long way to go in alleviating the suffering of animals. Animals are not as intelligent as people, but they are intelligent and they do feel pain. So for as long as I'm in public life, I want the RSPCA and similar organisations to know that they have a friend in this House. I'm a Liberal because I believe the role of government is to give people a hand up and not a hand out. I believe in limited government regulation with unlimited business opportunity. For benefiting both business and consumers, the spirit of capitalism and free enterprise beats red tape and central planning every time. I believe people who work long hours trying to stay afloat while costs rise and earnings are falling should not have to come home to clean graffiti off their fences, to repair vandalism, and to be kept awake by hoons through the night, as well as feeling unsafe or insecure in their own house. I believe effective representatives are elected to solve problems and not dwell on them. I believe that Conservatives should be conservationists, and protecting our environment needs more than just lip service. I believe that government spending should be determined by what a community needs and not by how they vote. And I believe that $1 in the hand of a citizen is usually more wisely spent or saved or invested than $1 in the hand of government. It follows naturally for me that we should aim to leave more money in the pocket of citizens and put less in the treasuries of government. I believe it is better to honestly disappoint people by doing what is right, rather than temporarily appease them by doing what you know is wrong. I believe the primary function of government is to promote conditions in which the individual enjoys freedom. The great Australian Rupert Murdoch recently said that while there is a genuine scientific debate about global warming, the planet deserves the benefit of the doubt, which leads me to an area where I disagree most strongly with ALP members. It is my passionate belief in uranium mining in Western Australia. I noted with regret the deafening silence during the recent election campaign from other advocates of uranium mining from the other side of politics. The reality is that mining uranium and reducing global carbon emissions go hand in hand. Any response to carbon emissions that does not include a substantial role for nuclear energy is simply not credible. Solar, wind and geothermal all have a role, but they need the sheer grunt of fission. Nuclear power plants have barely any carbon emissions. Coal-fired power plants are the biggest contributor to the world's carbon output. Its opponents have worked hard in Australia to invest the words uranium and nuclear with fear and loathing, but many nations, including France and Japan, generate over half their electricity from nuclear sources. It is morally and logically incoherent for us to say that we are happy to mine and export uranium for others to use as low-carbon energy sources, but we are morally opposed to the development of nuclear energy in our own country. If the Greens and the left wing of the Labor Party really had the best interests of the environment at heart and not the instinctive blocking of progress, they would surely agree. I would also like to make special note to the experience of Aboriginal people in our state. I recall driving through New Mexico in the United States a few years ago, Navajo country. I pulled into a gas station and noticed the guy filling the car was a Navajo Indian. The girl behind the counter was a Navajo, as were the waitresses, chefs and the people who ran the hotel. In fact, in this town, almost every small business was owned and staffed by Navajo Indians. It occurred to me that you would never see this in Australia, and I pondered this situation for a reason why. And the answer, Mr. Speaker, is simple. What these people have that Aboriginals don't have is a sense of purpose. That is why I applaud the intentions of Andrew Forrest, because governments are not the only answer to improving Aboriginal living standards. People like Andrew Forrest are. Real jobs are. I would also like to pay tribute to the mining companies of this state, who are by far the largest employers of Indigenous Australians of any sector of the economy. Mining companies are doing far more for practical reconciliation than all of the social workers, academics, liaison officers, government agencies and sorry days combined. There are, of course, the reasons why I am a Liberal. It's because I believe in a fair go and giving anyone who wants to try a real chance at success. It is why I'm committed to fighting for the quality of life and basic services that should be the first priority of any government, prosperity with a purpose. As Sir Robert Menzies said, we are determined to be a progressive party willing to experiment, but believing in the individual, his rights and his enterprise. I'm a strong proponent of federalism. I believe that sovereignty should be constitutionally divided between a central governing authority and the states. The Founding Fathers were deliberate in creating checks and balances. They felt strongly that the state's interests should be respected and safeguarded, wary of an intervening national executive. Government at a central and distant point can never be government of the people. The great Austrian Jewish philosopher Karl Popper talked about the limited ability of any central agency or plan to understand, govern and control something as diverse, unpredictable, fast-moving and innovative as a democratic society. That is why I reject the premise that state legislatures should cede more and more functions to the Commonwealth. I accept, however, that Australians are overgoverned and that local, state and federal powers should approach their task with a listening ear, a light touch and a desire to increase the realm of the private, civil and voluntary society and reduce our call on the state's monopoly over coercion and compulsion through the law and regulation. Mr. Speaker, I was not born in this state, but I chose to call Western Australia home. In the past decade, over 300,000 people have made the decision to cross the Nullarbor or cross the oceans and start a new life in Western Australia. 8 years ago, I was one of those people. This collaboration of different nationalities, ethnicity and interstate parochialism all contribute to the special diversity that is Western Australia, and I fell in love with this state the day I moved here. I would also like to express my appreciation for the love and support of my wife Vicky, who is in the gallery, and our beloved fur kids, our German Shepherds Sasha and Rex. Vicky has not stood behind me in this campaign. She has walked next to me each day and I am forever in her debt. Without the support, help and love of my family, I would not be here. I can never adequately express the thanks my father, Charles, deserves for his gifts to me. Dad came to Perth for the last week of the campaign and turned 76 on the day of the election, a true Australian hero and a proud Vietnam veteran. There is nothing my mother would not do to help me. From the sacrifices they made to provide me with a Jesuit education, to the day-to-day tasks they still happily perform, I'm eternally grateful. My sister, Janelle, who is ill at the moment and I wish her the best, is the best sister a bloke could ever want. I've also been blessed with the support of Margie and Brian and would like to thank them for everything they do to assist. Locally, every member knows of the value of local supporters. My friends in my own suburb of Atwell, such as Steve Patelli and Sharon Leach, and the warm welcome we have received from the Leeming Bowling Club has been outstanding. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, I would like to remind the House of the top 10 commandments of William Botka, because these are the principles I will keep in mind every time we are called upon to act in this place. You cannot bring about prosperity by discouraging thrift. You cannot strengthen the weak by weakening the strong. You cannot help little men by tearing down big men. You cannot lift the wage earner by pulling down the wage payer. You cannot help the poor by destroying the rich. You cannot establish sound security on borrowed money. You cannot further the brotherhood of man by inciting class hatred. You cannot keep out of trouble by spending more than you earn. You cannot build character and courage by destroying men's initiative and independence. And lastly, you cannot help men permanently by doing for them what they can and should do for themselves. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.